Okay, hi everybody. This is the next video in our series about rulers with iron fists, chapter 13. Here's what you need for this video. You need to have your history textbook open to page 281, and you also need to have your notes that are attached to this lesson. And you should have those in front of you right now as you follow along with the lesson. So the first two lessons for this chapter were about Joseph Stalin, and we talked about his rise to power and all of the things that he did with his power, and it was pretty rough. Well, today we're going to talk about the dictator who came to power in Italy, Benito Mussolini. And unfortunately, it's going to be more of the same. It's going to be a dark, very troubling story about Benito Mussolini and his rise to power in Italy. So we're going to start by looking at the first page of our PowerPoint. Mussolini in Italy. And the title he gave himself was Il Duce, which means the leader in Italian. So there's a picture of him, and then there's a picture of Italy. Italy is the nation that looks like a boot. Probably know that. All right. As always, we start with when he was born. He was born in 1883 in Italy. His father was a strong blacksmith, and he told his son, "Stand up for yourself, son." And this is a picture of his father. His father was a socialist. Now, we hear this word a lot on the news. A socialist, a socialist. What is socialism? So I looked up a definition for kids, something that would be easy for you to understand. So here is what we have. Socialism is a way to organize a society, and it deals with the economy. Remember, the economy is buying and selling, what creates wealth. Socialism wants to spread wealth evenly. Everybody should be treated fairly. Everybody should get the same. And most socialists agree that the government should control at least some of the business's property. Maybe not all of them, but at least some of them. So that is a basic definition of socialism. Okay, so we talked about his birth and his dad. Now we have his school days, and we see a picture. This is his mother. And this picture down here is actually a picture of where he was born, and today it is a museum in Italy. His mom was a teacher, and she was really worried because even as a young child, Mussolini had a violent temper. And she would try to help him to control his temper, but it didn't work very well. At his neighborhood school, he was so violent that they said, "We can't handle your son. Your son needs to leave this school." So she convinced her husband to send him to the finest schools they could afford. Well, he gets to these schools called boarding school. And boarding school is where you live at the school all the time. You're not living at home. You live there and go to school there. So this is what happened. He was sent to a boarding school first. It was run by monks. Kind of like priests, think of it that way. Well, it was a strict school. He got expelled because he stabbed another student with a penknife. And then he went to another school, and the same thing happened. He stabbed somebody and got expelled because he had never learned to control his temper. He finally managed to graduate from another school and earn a teaching certificate to become a teacher. Now, when I heard that, since I am a teacher, I was disturbed. A person like this should never be a teacher and should never be in charge of children, ever. So anyway, fortunately, he taught for a while, but he didn't like the job. He didn't think it suited him, which I think is a relief for all of the school children. So that was his school days. Then we get to Switzerland. So after he quits his teaching job, he goes to Switzerland and he kind of moves around from job to job. He even worked in a chocolate factory for a while, but no matter what he did, he wasn't happy. Nothing could satisfy him. At night, he started going to places in Switzerland called cafes. And this picture, here's a big building, and then the bottom level, you can see it says Cafe Odeon. This is actually a cafe that Mussolini went to. So in the evenings, a lot of people would meet at these cafes, they would drink coffee, and they would talk about their ideas. So a lot of other European people were at these cafes too, and they started talking about their ideas about why they didn't like the government and how the government should be different. So they thought about the government being run by working class people. Instead of kings, how about working class people running the government instead? Well, this idea appealed to him. Remember, his dad had been a socialist, so he'd been hearing these ideas his whole life, so he really liked this idea. He goes back to Italy, and he became involved with the Socialist Party in Italy. He wrote for the socialist newspapers. He stirred up revolts and strikes. He led a violent mob in a riot. He got arrested and put in jail several times because of his violent activities. Right, so here is the symbol of the Socialist Party in Italy. Here is Mussolini's mug shot when he was arrested. It's always nice to have a ruler who has a mug shot. So there he is when he got arrested. And here is Avanti, and this was a socialist newspaper that he wrote for. So at this time, World War I happens. Many of the socialists said we should not get involved in World War I. No way. But Mussolini was one of the ones who said, yes, we should. We should fight on the side of the Allies. We should show them what we're made of. We should get more power back again. So Mussolini wanted to fight in World War I. Well, the socialists didn't like that, and he basically got kicked out of the Socialist Party because he agreed to fight World War I. So after World War I, he has meetings with other men, and some of them were criminals. Many of them were violent men, and they were men who all wanted to change Italy's government. So this group of men helped him form the Fascist Party in Italy in 1919. I'm going to give you a basic definition of fascism. What does fascism include? So we have fascism is one of their beliefs is there should be only one political party. The Fascist Party should be the only party in power. Similar to communism, the Communist Party should be the only one in power. We don't want any other parties. We don't want anybody that disagrees with us. Just us. Oops, sorry about that. Next one. They believed in totalitarian control, which means the government has total control and it should be through a dictator. They believe, hey, it's okay to use force in politics. Violence and use of force, that's just part of the political process. Violence is okay. They believed in strong nationalism. We're all about our country only. We don't care about any other country. All we care about is what's best for us. And they believed in aggressive foreign policy. They said we are superior to other countries. We need more land for our people. And if we want more land, we have the right to attack weaker countries and take their land. So this was the fascist belief system. Now, this is a very simple definition, but this is basically what the Fascist Party stood for and believed. Okay, the black shirts. Mussolini chose the title Il Duce, in Italy means the leader. His party members wore black shirts and a black flat-topped hat called a fez. They became known as the black shirts. Black shirts were basically thugs. They were violent, and they fought with anybody who opposed them. Remember, the fascists think force and violence, if you want to win in politics, yeah, being violent's fine, no problem. So this is a picture of just a couple of the black shirts. You can see that little kind of funny looking fez hat and their black uniforms. They were very violent, and anybody who tried to oppose them met with their violence. So Mussolini is coming to power. The black shirts just kept terrorizing anyone who did not support Il Duce. and fascism kept becoming more popular. Now, sometimes this is hard to understand, how some of these rulers with iron fists came to power. But even though there was some violence, Italy was experiencing a lot of the same things as the other countries: poverty, worker strikes, inflation, lack of food. And their king was weak. Their king wasn't doing anything to help them. They wanted a strong leader. And Mussolini, kind of like we're going to learn about Hitler later, Mussolini gave great speeches that inspired confidence in people. And they thought, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about. So fascism became more and more popular. So in 1922, Mussolini and 52,000 black shirts marched on Rome, and the king was forced to make Mussolini the prime minister. They were marching on Rome. Here's a picture of it. And of course, the picture's not very good because it was taken in 1922. You can see the black shirts are holding signs. I have no idea what they say. They're in Italian, and I can't even read the letters. But so these guys are marching on Rome. And from what I saw in my research, is that the police didn't stop them. They had so much support that nobody stopped this giant mob of people marching on Rome and marching on the king. So the king says, okay, I'm going to make Mussolini the prime minister. Okay, so there are some positives, things that Mussolini did for Italy after he came to power. He built roads, schools, factories, and hospitals. He improved the infrastructure, that word we've been talking about. He provided land for farmers, very helpful. He introduced new welfare benefits and sanitation programs. Remember when we learned about the Gilded Age, there was no sanitation, and yeah. So sanitation programs are good. And he also improved the railroad system so that the trains were more modern and they ran on time. And like I said, he gave great speeches that inspire confidence in people. So there were some positives during the reign of Mussolini. However, the negatives. Mussolini took total control of all industry, education, and the media. School kids were now taught, you must obey because you must. And even little kids were put into military groups where they learned how to be Italian soldiers. He used censorship to control the newspaper, so they only said good things about him. Nobody could say anything against him, or the black shirts would come after you. He had a secret police force to get rid of his enemies. You opposed him, they killed you. His leadership eventually became a reign of terror. People were terrified, kind of like we said in the Soviet Union. People are terrified. They say anything, they're going to be eliminated, they're going to be attacked, they're going to be imprisoned. And last but not least, he became an ally of Hitler. He felt like his philosophy and Hitler's were very similar, and they really liked each other and became partners and friends. These are the negatives. This picture I thought was disturbing. These are little kids. These are probably first graders. You can see them dressed in military uniforms with the little black fez. They had children in military clubs from the age of 6. And from what I researched, these kids would be sent to these military camps all summer. So when you got off on summer vacation, you didn't go out and play and swim and have all kinds of fun. You went to a military camp all summer where they taught you about fascism and taught you that that was what was right, and they taught you how to fight. When these kids get a little older, they're going to put rifles in their hands. There were some pictures of kids as young as 10, like 5th graders, already have rifles in their hands. So these are the negatives of Mussolini. Now, I have one video that just gives you a little overview, a little more information of what it was like when Benito Mussolini came to power. Here it is.
As Joseph Stalin established firm control over the Soviet Union, another dictator rose to power in Europe. Who was Benito Mussolini? What type of government did he implement? During the 1920s, Benito Mussolini established a totalitarian regime in Italy. A powerful and persuasive speaker, Mussolini played on public dissatisfaction with high unemployment, inflation, and frequent labor strikes as well as fear of communist influence in politics. Mussolini took advantage of the unstable situation by appealing to Italy's wounded national pride. He won the support of many Italians by promising to address the economic suffering and the threats posed by communism. In 1921, Mussolini established the Fascist Party. Fascism is a political ideology that stresses extreme nationalism and places the interest of the nation above that of the individual. Fascism also emphasizes the need for a strong leader with the power necessary to address and eliminate the nation's problems. In October of 1922, Mussolini led 30,000 of his followers, known as Black Shirts, in an event known as the March on Rome. When many of the police, military, and government officials refused to stop the movement, the Italian king appointed Mussolini to lead the government. Rather than using the title of Prime Minister, Mussolini referred to himself as Il Duce, meaning the leader. Mussolini was granted emergency powers that were to last for only 1 year, but in doing so, the Italian parliament unknowingly established a dictatorship that would last for the next 20 years. Unlike Stalin, who used harsh methods to maintain control over his people, Mussolini sought to win public support. Mussolini praised the Italian people and their past, stirring up emotions by adopting much of the imagery of the Roman Empire. Mussolini glorified the nation's workers and the middle class, while promising to restore Italy to its former position as a world power. Under fascist rule, Italy had a balanced budget, inflation was eliminated, and the railway system was modernized. However, much of the success stemmed from the fact that Mussolini silenced his opposition. Opposing political parties were disbanded, while the press, radio, and film were used to distribute a ceaseless flow of propaganda. Over time, the fascists extended their control to every aspect of Italian life. The school system was used to indoctrinate children into fascist ideology. Students wore black uniforms, and the concepts of discipline, duty, and obedience were emphasized. Mussolini also hoped to enhance Italy's role on the world stage and preached that it was natural for strong nations to conquer weak ones. Ethiopia, one of the few remaining independent nations in Africa, became his first target. Haile Selassie, the Emperor of Ethiopia, pleaded with the League of Nations for support as thousands of Italian soldiers prepared to invade in 1935. The League of Nations responded with a modest economic boycott of Italy and offered no military assistance as Selassie was forced to flee. Ethiopia was conquered and officially annexed by Mussolini in May of 1936.
Okay, so that video just gave a little summary of what I've been talking about and showed you a little more pictures, and you got to see the kids your age who were actually in the military groups with the guns, like I told you. So, fascism. We talked about communism and we talked about the big problems with communism. There are many similar problems with fascism. Fascism is all about your country, all about the state. The state is more important than anything else. It doesn't matter. As long as you get what you want and your country gets stronger, it doesn't matter. Well, we know from the Bible that this philosophy is completely against what God teaches us. We are not to hurt and harm others just to get more for ourselves. And Mussolini's tactics were completely against God, threatening, violence, all of the things that the fascists used to maintain power. All of these things are the opposite of what God calls a Christian to be. And also, during this video, as you know, we're all in quarantine, so my husband was mowing the lawn, And I had the door shut, but he opened it. So you probably heard my husband mowing the lawn, and you might have heard my dog running around with his chain jangling, because I have a kind of small house. So even if I'm in the basement making a video, there's still going to be some noise. So if you heard all that, well, it's just part of my life right now. All right. Your assignment. Read pages 281 through 283, which is all about Il Duce. You are going to complete the LMS questions for today using your notes, the video, and the PowerPoint. Just so that I can see that you watched the video and you were listening and you understand what we were discussing today, because I can't see you face to face. These videos seem like a good way to make sure that what I would have taught you in school, you're still hearing. Okay, well, I will see you next time.